So why do so many foreigners choose Thailand over Malaysia? Thailand has become insanely popular, especially with Westerners. It's just exponentially more popular as a tourist destination. I wanted to talk about that a little bit because I made an interview video. So I did street interviews with foreign tourists in Kuala Lumpur. And I asked them, do you prefer Malaysia or Thailand? You know, these were tourists who have been to both countries. The answer was almost all Thailand. And I guess that's to be expected. You know, I did ask, again, mostly like Western tourists. And this is not to say one country is better than another. The point of this is not to try and figure out which country is better. You know, both countries are fantastic. It's kind of to just point out differences between them and help people figure out which country might suit them best. Because for me, you know, I don't really need to choose so much. I have the freedom to move around a little bit and be a little bit nomadic, but most people, that's not the case, right? Most people have to pick a place to choose home and stay there. And sure, you can travel once in a while, but I think these kind of videos help people, especially expats, kind of figure out where to go. And so, yeah, I'm going to give you a little bit of my input. So I am here in Thailand right now. I'm in Pattaya, Jom Tien to be exact. So I never actually stay in like the crazy, you know, center of Pattaya. But I'm like 15 minutes outside of it, 10, 15 minutes outside of it, by the beach, just chilling. I was in Bangkok for 2 weeks and decided to get out. You know, I'm here for Songkran Festival, water fights in the streets. You know, if you haven't seen it on social media, I'm sure by now. So fun, so fun. So I decided to come here again, spend a little bit more time in Thailand. I was just, again, spending so much time in Kuala Lumpur that it feels nice. It's refreshing to change it up. So yeah, I have experience living in both places. You know, I've spent extended periods of time in Bangkok, Pattaya, here in Thailand, and then also in Kuala Lumpur, in Malaysia, and also traveled around Malaysia for over a year. So I have a good amount of perspective on these two countries and this topic. I've said before that Malaysia is a place to live and that Thailand is a place to vacation. There's truth to that, yes, but it's not like a be all end all. Like if you like to party, you may also love Malaysia. And if you're somebody who doesn't like to party at all, you may also love Thailand, 100%. I myself am kind of in between the two. You know, I don't drink alcohol, but I do go out to clubs. I do DJ. I like to go out. I like to have a lively atmosphere. Yeah, that's why I love Bangkok. Kuala Lumpur is a lot more chill. And so I think there is such a complete difference between the two places if you're talking about big cities, where Kuala Lumpur is really chill, really composed. To me, it's not crazy. It's not too hectic. There's traffic, but it's not like anything crazy. In Bangkok, it's the polar opposite. You know, it's very consistently wild, even on the sidewalks. And you know, as you see, motorbikes on the sidewalk, which happens way more frequently here than it does in Malaysia. And so it just creates a little bit more of a chaotic atmosphere in general. But there's positives and negatives to that. You know, I thrive off of that most of the time. You know, I enjoy being in a chaotic atmosphere, but it does stress me out. It does get to me staying there long term. And so this is why I started to think, okay, Thailand is a great holiday spot, or even a spot you come for 1 month, you come for 2 weeks or something, especially if you work online or something. And then Malaysia is a place where you can kind of stay more stress-free, you can kind of stay focused on your work. Yeah, this is another thing. Thailand is the land of distractions. I've said it many times. It is, you know, whether you drink or not, still doesn't matter. There's a large social scene here. There's always people coming in and out. You know, you're going to have pressure to go out. You're going to have pressure to at least go to dinner or meet with friends, see people coming through. And so there's a lot more of that here, I find, where in KL, yes, I'm building quite a big social scene and social life, but it took me a lot more time. You know, I've had to be there over 1 year now to really have a large network of friends. Where Thailand, I feel like it happens very quickly. You can kind of come here for a weekend and like you'll quickly make friends, especially with foreigners, mostly with foreigners. A lot of massage shops here, pretty quiet. at the moment. Songkran was definitely a busy time. What happens is it's a 3-day water fight festival everywhere throughout Thailand, but in Pattaya they keep it going a little bit longer, an extra couple days typically. So if you go to some areas, like even now, like there will be people doing water fights. Yeah, it's quite composed right now, quite chill. Now, I have to mention that I'm mostly speaking about the big cities. You know, I talk a lot about the two countries, and I usually refer to the big cities, Bangkok, Kuala Lumpur. But the rest of the countries are completely different, right? Both of the countries. So a lot of people are not big city people. A lot of people are either they like to live in like a rural area, something a little more quiet, or something beach-like. And so both countries do offer something for those people. You know, I am one of those people too. I also like the beach life. I kind of struggle between, do I really want to live in the city or do I want to live beachside? And here we are coming up to the beach actually now. So I'm not staying too far away. And I think Malaysia has good options for that, but I think Thailand does win when it comes to islands or beach living. I think it does win a little bit. And now I haven't seen some of the nicest places in Malaysia. I haven't been to some of the more beautiful, pristine islands, places like Perhentian Island, Tioman Island. I haven't seen these places. I've only been to Langkawi, right, which is not pristine by any by any means. And so maybe I don't have the full perspective here. But in general, Thailand is kind of known to have a ton of different types of islands for any type of person, whether you want party or you want super relaxation. And it's accessible and it's affordable. In Malaysia, it's a little bit less affordable, the islands and some of the more really nice places. It's just like, it's not really affordable. And in Thailand, the really nice places are pretty affordable, honestly. Then you have somewhere like here, Pattaya or Jomtien, which is, let's say, the little more relaxed area outside of Pattaya, which is a city, but it's also beachside, you know? So it's a blend, and it's 2 hours from Bangkok. And I've been coming here for years. I like it. It gets a bad rap. You know, some people really don't like it, especially after maybe they go to Phuket or Krabi. And it's just a little bit more nice in Phuket and Krabi. You know, the beaches are a little nicer. It's less rough around the edges. You know, they still have the red light districts there, but I think Pattaya is known for that a little bit more. So, yeah, it gets a little bit of a bad rap, and maybe it's not for everyone. But to me, it's just like a nice beach town. Easy to get around, like tons of shops everywhere. Everything, food, massage. You have 7-Eleven on every corner. You have supermarkets. Everything is very cheap, one of the cheapest places in Thailand. So for me, I love Pattaya. And if I'm comparing it to something like Langkawi in Malaysia, I don't think that Langkawi can offer a similar thing. I don't. And if we talk about something like Penang in Malaysia, you know, that's probably the closest comparison, and it's not really a similar thing. It's a lot more tame, you know, it's a lot more relaxed, a lot more wholesome in general. And even though the beaches here, it's whatever, it's not like special. It's kind of like Bali, how, you know, you hear it's so special, but then the beaches are like, most of the beaches are not nice in the tourist areas. It's like that. It's like, it's just a beach. And that's how it felt in Langkawi for the most part, and in Penang too, for the most part. But there are some nice beaches around Penang that you can kind of travel to. But the areas are just more quiet. It's less developed. It's not somewhere I'd want to live as much as here. Here I have the convenience. And so if I'm going to live in Malaysia, I'm going to live in Kuala Lumpur. Or I'm going to go to Borneo and live somewhere where it's quite naturesque, or in Kota Kinabalu, in, you know, the capital of Sabah. But otherwise, you know, so far, I like the big cities. I'm a city boy. And so great setup, either staying in Bangkok and coming to Pattaya, very easy to come for the weekend, or you just stay in KL, and then you can take quick trips to Thailand for the most part and enjoy the islands here. So when it comes to the costs, I'd have to say they are similar. You know, both are affordable, but Thailand does have the upper edge on being more affordable all around. Now, you could say in Bangkok, in some of the nice neighborhoods, the most popular neighborhoods, it does get expensive. but same in Kuala Lumpur. So I'd say it's roughly pretty similar, but you can typically get a little bit nicer of a condo here, a little bit nicer amenities, stuff like this, for a little bit cheaper of a price. You usually just get a little bit more for your money here, I would say, in Thailand, especially somewhere like Pattaya. But if I'm comparing Bangkok versus KL, yeah, I actually spend less money in Thailand, in Bangkok, I find. But it's not too much different. I've mentioned this actually many times in the past, how it's very similar. If you're thinking about cost, I wouldn't really say one much more than the other. I wouldn't factor it in too much. Now, I don't drink alcohol. I think if you drink alcohol, that's going to be a big deal because alcohol in Malaysia is expensive. Big Muslim population, it's taxed. Yeah, so it's a little bit more expensive. In Thailand, not so much, especially if you really seek out the little spots, the mom and pop shops. It's very cheap to drink here in Thailand. Or you buy it at 7-Eleven, it's extremely cheap. I don't drink, so that doesn't get factored in. So that's why I think I spend similar. But I think if you do drink, especially if you drink frequently, you're going to end up spending a fair amount of money in Malaysia on drinking. So keep that in mind. So it is now approaching May, so we're kind of approaching rainy season. When it comes to weather, again, similar climates, but I have to say, once again, I have to give this one to Thailand on the weather. It just has the slight edge in terms of feeling a little bit more tropical and a little bit less, like for example, Malaysia's just always humid, and like I would never want to sit outside on my balcony and chill in any regard, really. I just never do. And like here in Thailand, even in Bangkok, if I have a balcony with a decent view, I will definitely sit out there and chill. So it's quite different. I don't know. While it is very hot and humid here, and this is even a very hot and humid month in Thailand, for some reason it just feels a little bit nicer. And it's the same thing when I go to Bali. It's like very hot, very humid, but the weather feels nicer. Something about it's nicer. Something about this, getting sun there feels nice. Whereas oftentimes in Malaysia, it's like the sun is out in Kuala Lumpur and it doesn't feel that great because it's like muggy, it's humid, and it just doesn't feel that good. And so, yeah, the Malaysia weather is tough. It's something people mostly deal with. Mostly the locals don't love it either, but it's way better than our weather back home, like in America, in New York. So huge plus on that. I don't mind the weather in Malaysia, but I'd have to give the upper hand a little bit to Thailand on that one. See, there's a lot of little restaurants off the beach right here. Let's talk a little bit about the food in these places because obviously that's a big one. Southeast Asia, Asia in general, a lot of people visit these places just for the food. In my video where I asked people about Thailand versus Malaysia, some of them did say that Thai food was their favorite, or maybe that was the reason they were choosing Thailand was because of Thai food. And yeah, I think Thai food is also very recognized by Westerners. Like in their country, we can get Thai food. We eat pad Thai mostly, right? We don't actually know authentic Thai food and dishes, but we do know pad Thai. Yeah, we have Thai restaurants, basically, and it's really popular, especially in America. I think in the UK, Australia, Thai food is huge. But nobody knows Malaysian food, and so people get to Malaysia and they don't really know. Hi, how are you? They see food and they think it's like, okay, it looks kind of Indian, maybe Indonesia they've been to, and it looks the same, looks similar. But yeah, people love Thai food, and while it is very spicy, I think that it's preferential, right? To me, I actually prefer Malaysian cuisine, and I think it has more options to offer. You have Indian, you have the full range of Indian food, different curries and tons of sides, everything, right? But then you have the full Chinese food side of Malaysian food, which I don't eat, but it's huge. I grew up eating Chinese food. I can't eat it now. I have food allergies, but yeah, Malaysian food, Chinese food, Indian food, and Malay food. You have a huge range, so there's a lot more to offer. Thai food, tons of different dishes, but it's more linear. There's not quite as much, but it's amazing. Both are amazing, and both are like world renowned for their food. Because a lot of the stuff in Malaysia, it may not look appetizing to like a Western person who doesn't eat food like that and doesn't mix all of their curries in one dish and eat with their hands. It may seem sloppy and gross at first, but Actually, it's delicious, and it makes sense once you try it. So that's what it is, folks. It feels so nice to be back in Pattaya. So nice. Nice breeze. I mean, because I was just in Bangkok for, was it 2 weeks, potentially 3 weeks? Yeah, it is hot this month. And so getting beachside is, God, just a couple degrees difference right now is making a huge difference to me. Because it has been very hot in Bangkok. It's been quite hot. But yeah, people enjoying the days out here. Again, not so busy, but definitely people out here. Just the end of high season, basically. Just the transition into the rainy season. But personally, I think that April's still a great time to visit. I always come still in April. You mostly get good weather, like 90% of the time. Even May, you still get some fine weather. It's fine. Not that rainy season, you can't come visit during the peak rainy season as well. But if you have the option to, come during the dry season, I would say, for me, that's my move. Now, the difference is it's a lot more booked up and it's a lot more expensive, for sure, during the high season. So keep that in mind. There's positives and negatives to it, but just in terms of actually enjoying yourself and getting the best trip, I would say, yeah. I mean, choosing dry season or, in between dry and wet season is probably a good move, like a time like now. But I've been here in both dry and wet season, and I don't mind the wet season either. You get some nice days, but it can get depressing if you get too many rainy days in a row. Sitting in Bangkok, sitting in your condo, not ideal. But that happens in Malaysia way more often, I would say. Rains seemingly almost every day in Malaysia. Just gonna take a little walk down here to the beach. I have my sneakers on. Doesn't really matter so much. Got people out here on jet skis, mostly just renting them. Not the cleanest water, I will say. It's a real brown tint to that water, right? But that's all right. Take one of these bad boys for a spin. It is fun, but it's a little overpriced out here for jet skis, I would say, for a short ride. It's fun, though, once in a while, right? Yeah, kind of quiet out here. Actually, some Thai people out here, interestingly enough. Not so slammed with Russians like you would see all the time, especially in peak high season. Pattaya and Jomtien and Prasamnak Hill, all these popular areas around here basically are full living with Russian expats now. But they're not out here in full swing like they would be sometimes. Sometimes it's just like every one of these chairs is, full, overweight Russian in a Speedo, basically. Now, the next and probably the biggest difference at this point for me between these two countries would be cannabis here in Thailand, which obviously is not in Malaysia. It's not legal in Malaysia, at least. And it's a huge thing. There's a massive legal cannabis scene now here in Thailand, very Amsterdam-like. I'd say it's surpassed Amsterdam when it comes to the cannabis scene. And it's insane. It's a crazy thing. It's a crazy thing that it happened in Thailand, in Asia in general. It happened kind of overnight, randomly. And I think in terms of tourism, it's a big decision. It's a good decision. And for somebody like me who likes cannabis, it's a nice thing to have. It's a really nice thing to have. For me, I find there are positive benefits to it in my life that I feel go away when I'm in Malaysia. Mainly for my sleep, mainly because I have sleep issues. Mostly I just use it recreationally because I enjoy it. It's just something I've always enjoyed. But there are some benefits when it comes to helping me fall asleep at night, especially when I have certain things to do at certain time the next day and I need to wake up. It's something, if I can put myself down, put myself to sleep, it's very helpful, just because I've always had sleep issues. Other than that, I'm not going to sit here and say it's like such a medicinal thing for me personally. I think it can be for a lot of people and different diseases or ailments. Maybe it could help people with symptoms. But for me, I'd say with sleep or when I have a stomach issue, because I have a lot of stomach trouble. When I'm having an episode and I'm having severe stomach pains, cannabis can literally take those away instantly. and actually make me hungry instantly, so it's kind of crazy. And when I am in Malaysia, I don't have an option for that. And so for me personally, this is something that's, yeah, it does make an impact on my life, having legal cannabis here, which I don't have in Malaysia. Now, if you're a non-smoker, it's not going to matter. It's not going to affect you. I say the more typical person in general drinks alcohol. I think still a small percentage of people overall in the population smoke cannabis, but in the grand scheme of things, once you're here, you see I think it's 6,000, 7,000 shops, something insane in the country. You see them literally every single street here. There are multiple shops, and so they just quickly become part of the culture now here. Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting. To me, like I said, I love it. I'm used to it. In the US, we have kind of built a cannabis scene there. I don't think Malaysia will ever do it. I don't think that it will. I can't say ever. And also, I don't really know the ins and outs of their government, but I know that it's relatively conservative. And I know that, it's haram. Within Islam, you can't use cannabis. And the government there typically makes rules based on Islamic beliefs and culture. It's very unlikely, I think, for them, for the sake of tourism especially, to make a decision like that, to legalize cannabis. Maybe it will happen one day. Maybe they see the numbers in Thailand, they see how much money is being generated for the country. Maybe they think, wow, we have to do this. Maybe, but seeing from it, just how it's quite a conservative country compared to somewhere like Thailand, yeah, I don't know. I don't see it happening. I really don't see it happening. Here's a shop, actually, Sky High. One of my friends runs this shop. Shout out to Addy if he's watching this. Oh, it's closed. They're sleeping in late. Hello. Sawadee Kap. Massage here. We got diamond massage. Nice ladies. Obviously, everyone nice and friendly here. Always. They love the camera as well, for the most part. Not the foreigners. The foreigners, they don't love the camera here. Especially in Pattaya, when some of these foreigners are here for, red light district stuff. They don't want to be on camera. That's just how it goes. But the locals, they love it. They do. As I pass the immigration here, you can see the advertisement for the DTV, the 5-year visa. So I'm going to talk about visas and staying long-term in both of these countries. That's another thing. Big factor for most of the people, especially expats watching my channel, where a lot of times I talk about, how great it is living long-term in Malaysia. Well, the truth is I live on a tourist visa and I come in and out of the country. And a lot of people who are a little bit more settled, especially have a family, they don't want to do that. They want to move somewhere and they want to have a visa for a few years. Yeah, in Malaysia, you have to invest a lot of money. You have to invest a lot of money, over 100,000 US dollars into the country, into an account, into property. And only then can you actually get a multi-year visa. The only other option would be a digital nomad visa for 2 years. And that's the limit, 2 years maximum. And you have to meet the requirements for that as well. Here, now in Thailand, they have just many different options. They have a retirement visa, which has been the option for people for many years now, age 50 plus. And then now they've come out with a DTV visa. This is essentially like a digital nomad visa, or working overseas type visa. And it's a 5-year visa. And I believe you renew it every 6 months. And it's around 200 US dollars every time you renew it. So per year, you're spending around 400 US dollars. Quite affordable for a visa somewhere in Asia. It's fantastic, actually. It's hot out here, folks. Now I'm sweating like a pig. Now we're in the peak sun. I think it's approaching like 11 a.m. now, 11:30 a.m. So the sun is just beating down. But yeah, I found for me, staying in Malaysia, just doing visa runs on a tourist visa is my best option because I travel so much anyways. But for most people, not going to find that realistic. And so Thailand gives you real options to stay here long term as a foreigner. And the requirements are not that serious. For the DTV visa, the requirements are not that high. I'm not going to say anyone can do it, but it's not that difficult. And I think Malaysia needs to introduce something like this. As much as they're trying to attract like high income foreigners, wealthy foreigners, I don't want to say just like rich people, but this is the type of foreigner that Malaysia really wants to attract more than anything. And I think they've gone a little bit too far. They've taken it a little bit too far and alienated a lot of people who would otherwise consider Malaysia as a home. Yeah, there is something to say, like, people don't want to attract, like a lot of the locals in Malaysia will say they don't want to attract the same type of tourist maybe that comes to Thailand. I think there's some misconceptions around that all the tourists that come here are maybe animals or idiots. But yeah, I get what you're saying. There are those people because there's so many tourists coming here and it is a party place. There are going to be bad tourists as well. And because it is a place with legal kind of borderline gray area, red light district activity, everywhere in the country, you can access it anywhere in the country. It gets a certain rap, I think, for the types of tourists that it could attract. But the reality is Thailand attracts every different type of tourist, every different type of family person or couple to party person to beachgoer, everything, right? I think some of those people are multiple different types. And I think that Malaysia in general attracts a much more wholesome person, a much more composed person in general. Of course, they get the Muslim tourists, for sure. Like, people who are Muslim feel comfortable in an environment like Malaysia, like Kuala Lumpur. It's comfortable. A lot of Muslims around, easy to get halal food. I think that's another concern. I think the biggest concern for most people with Thailand, let's say like Malaysians, thinking about like a long-term life in Thailand, would be communication issues. Actually, I have Malaysian friends who tell me that they would love to live in Thailand if there wasn't the language barrier. If Bahasa was the spoken language, or if they spoke Thai or something like that they would consider it. But because they don't, that they would never even consider it. And that to me makes a lot of sense. For me, I mean, it's one of the big draws about Malaysia, right? Is that it's an English-speaking country. And it's like one of the biggest differentiating factors, I think, between Thailand and Malaysia is that the locals there speak English. And here, it's just a lot more difficult. You're typically going to either interact with more foreigners, or you're going to be having very baseline conversation with Thai people, with locals, which is fine. For me, it doesn't really negatively impact my life too much, the language here. I don't think of it in a big negative way. But when you do go somewhere like Malaysia and you stay long term, you do realize that you can build stronger connections, I think, more quickly, especially with locals. And it's like easier for me to make male Malaysian friends than it is for me to make male Thai friends. But it's much easier for me to make foreigner friends here than it is for me to make foreigner friends in Malaysia. So yeah, there's always these trade-offs, I would say. For me, overall, both countries are fantastic places to live. And they're both extremely close to each other, so you can go back and forth very easily. If you do have some freedom, or even if you just have weekends off, so hot, unbelievably hot. If you just have weekends off, you can occasionally just go to Thailand for the weekend, or you can occasionally go to Malaysia for the weekend. And it's not too bad. It's quite reasonable. But in the end, you have to choose a place that you want to live the most. I always say that you need to go to both places. You need to try both places for an extended period of time, 1 month plus, if not a good 6-month stint of living somewhere before you get a real feel for the place and if it suits you. So, at this point, I'm very content with saying that I don't really have a home base and then I'm just, hopping around. I'm much happier that I don't need to make that difficult decision of like, where am I going to sign a lease for the next 12 months? To me, that's a stressful choice. That's a stressful decision. But I get that those folks out there who have a family or a job or whatever it is, you don't want to be, bopping around and having to think about your visa expiring every few months. So for 99% of people, the way that I live my life is not super comparable. And so, yeah, I'm trying to make this more focused on like other people's scenarios and situations. Because again, I talk a lot about Malaysia all the time about how it's kind of easy to just pop in and live long term. And it's true. It's easy to come in and adjust to the culture and the people, but it's not necessarily easy to come in and have your paperwork sorted out and, be legal there for the next couple of years. That's like the real hurdle with Malaysia. So I think that's something they need to work on. I know that's something that they are working on, is changing up the requirements for living long term for different visa options, and as well as introducing new visa options in the future. Have to quickly touch on the nightlife as well, because again, major difference between the two places. Myself being somebody who's organizing parties, DJing, kind of in this house techno music world a little bit, Thailand does take the edge. They do have a stronger nightlife scene in that regard. I think for any sort of nightlife. Realistically, Malaysia is not the place for that. While they do have that, it's not really the place for that. You really need to consider how important it is to you and if you can live without having that in a strong way. Because in Malaysia, I chase, I would say, action, or I chase going out and having fun and experiencing these things, and it's very difficult for it to pan out. Now, that's not to say I don't have a lot of fun and haven't had some really good times in Malaysia, but in terms of the actual venues and events that go on and stuff like this, it's very lackluster, relatively amateur types of partying and stuff like this. If you've experienced like a lot of places, if you've experienced places in Europe, you've experienced like even here in Bangkok, it's going to be a big difference. So just keep that in mind. But they do have that in Malaysia, so you can still go out regularly if you want to. But Bangkok, Thailand in general takes the cake with nightlife or going out. It's just what it is. It's what it's known for, right? And it's what I bet most of the people in the comments, especially most of my Malaysian audience, is going to say, like, yeah, you're right. If you want to party and you want to have fun, you want to go out drinking, Thailand is better for that, right? It makes sense. I think when it comes to raising a family, that's when people start to really think about, is Malaysia somewhere I could consider? I don't think most like single guys, for the most part, are considering Malaysia, because most single Western guys especially are still drinking. They still want to go out and have fun. It's like a big part of their life. People who are family oriented start thinking about all the other things and they no longer care about the nightlife. And that's where Malaysia starts to feel like a good option. Now, I know that I'm not like Mr. Family. I don't have a family and I'm a young single guy, and I've been in Malaysia, but that's one, because of the YouTube channel. That's the biggest part of it, is because of the YouTube channel. And I've been able to make good content there and build a good audience. It's also just a very easy and comfortable place to live. It'd be very easy to go to Malaysia and just get stuck for a couple of months in Kuala Lumpur, get into a routine, get healthy, and yeah, it feels comfortable. But I will say, you might get bored. This is the number one thing I actually hear from tourists or foreigners that I'm interviewing. We'll have conversation after the interview a lot of times, and they'll tell me that they feel a little bit bored after maybe 4 or 5 days, after 1 week in Kuala Lumpur. And so I think it's just a mindset thing, like going on vacation and looking for fun things to do and like activities and excursions, then yeah, maybe you will be bored. But if you're just living your life, if you're just, if you're you move there and you're living your normal routine, I don't think for the most part you will get bored if you're not a nightlife person. I think if you are, though, someone like me, I do get bored. After 1 month living in Malaysia, 1 month staying in Kuala Lumpur, let's say, not traveling anywhere, I start to get a little bit bored. I start to crave coming to Bangkok and having what I deem as a proper party, as a proper night out. Again, I've had some really good times out in Malaysia as well. In terms of that, let's give Thailand a 9 on the nightlife scale out of 10, and I would give Malaysia a 5 out of 10. All right, well, my storage was full on the microphone, so I had to cut the video, come back home. Now it's been a few hours, just chilling on the balcony. I want to add one last point about why foreigners actually choose Thailand over Malaysia. I would say, obviously, it's one of the biggest ones, maybe the biggest one, and that is dating women, considering it's mostly male travelers and expats moving overseas alone, traveling alone. It's typically males, and or otherwise it's a couple. Of course, there are female travelers out there, but it's less. But in general, I think even for dating for females traveling, I think if it's a female looking to casually date on her travels, Thailand is going to be a better option. Meeting other travelers, other backpackers, other expats, I think is quite easy. Just traveling through Thailand. Whereas in Malaysia, you kind of need to stay there for a little bit longer and learn your way and find your groups and find people and network. But I think this is obviously one of the big reasons why people travel to Thailand. Is that there's a portion of people who one either want to get a Thai wife or meet a woman in general, meet a long-term partner, right? Meet a long-term wife typically. Yeah, Thailand is one of those places. Philippines, another one of those places. Malaysia is not really one of those places. It's not a place where guys go to find a bride. But apart from that, even just casually dating here, like for me, for example, I'm 33 years old. I'm single, and just to meet women in a normal day-to-day scenario or also on dating apps, here is a significant difference. It's much easier. Casual dating is much less taboo. Yeah, the two are very polar opposites when it comes to dating. I will say in Malaysia, you can meet some great women there, and I think I've had successful dating experiences there, I can say, but it's not very frequent, and it's a lot more based on long-term commitment type situations. you know, I don't really drink alcohol, so I'm not in bars too much. If you really do just go out and hit bars as a single guy in Kuala Lumpur, you can do the casual dating thing as well, for sure. But I find like in Thailand, I can make it work in my life without needing to go to bars and drink. I can still casually meet women and date, and yeah, consider a long term relationship, but at the same time, not really focused on finding a woman for marriage, not focused on having kids. I think it's much easier in Thailand to find like minded people in that regard. But I've always said that I think Malaysia is a great place to find a good woman, or a wife, or somebody who's going to commit to you, somebody who has good values. I think it's a great place for that. But yeah, when it comes to like being a Westerner, a white person in Thailand, you obviously get, I would say, like a bit of privilege when it comes to dating. It's rather easy to date Thai women, and I think even in Malaysia we get a bit of privilege in that regard. That it's not that difficult to go out and meet women there if you put in some effort. In Thailand, it's like I said, somewhere people come to do that. This is not even talking about this whole red light district side of things where there's ladies of the night around, and there's these sections and walking streets and things like this with all these working women, and that's a whole other side of Thailand and a whole other part of the tourism here. And some expats, they call them sexpats. That's where the term comes from. It's like they're here uh, primarily for that, or they're traveling to only countries where they can find women easily, and they can pay their way for women. And so and it gives Thailand a certain image of not being family friendly, or it did for some time. I think now it's starting to break that, starting to break that image it's had. Because, for example, where I am now in Pattaya, in Jomtien, it's full of families now. It's like full of families, where it didn't used to be that, very much at all. Even in Pattaya City, in Pattaya Beach, you will find a lot of families, a lot of couples coming here. So it's not just like a bunch of rampant, single, crazed men. Although they're out there too, it is a wild place. But to me, it's just not maybe as seedy as some people think it might be. Or they spend a day here, they spend 2 days here, or they've never been here. I think once you explore around a bit and you spend a lot of time here, I don't know, I've met some good people in Pattaya, so I've also met some real seedy people as well. But same in Malaysia, Kuala Lumpur. I've met some real seedy people. I've met some really great people. Bangkok's, it's same thing. It's same thing anywhere. So yeah, that's that. I wanted to make this video because one of my highest performing videos ever was interviewing foreigners in Malaysia, asking them their experience in both countries. And yeah, a lot of them saying Thailand. And so since I made that video, I've been talking to people in person, trying to figure out, why or how do they feel about their experience in both countries. And so, yeah, I think it's interesting. It's interesting. No one country is better than another. Let me make that clear. This video is not a competition. It's simply just, putting some information out there, putting some ideas out there. Please let me know in the comments. How do you feel? Do you feel that that one country fits you better than the other? Yeah. How do you feel about it? I want to know. And do you have any thoughts about moving to one of these two countries from where you're at now? I would really love to know in the comments. Start some discussion. I always read the comments. I don't typically get to reply to most of them, but I always read them. So drop a thumbs up on the video, make sure you subscribe, and make sure to watch the video I've been talking about where I interview foreigners asking about Malaysia versus Thailand. You can watch that right here.